Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Degen Radio podcast. And I'm your host, Zero X Thiago. And today I had the pleasure to interview the co-founder of Curvance. Curvance is an innovative DeFi protocol that wants to bring DeFi to everyone. So let's hop into the episode. So hello, and welcome to the show. You're like the founder of Curvance. And can you introduce yourself and talk like how did you get into crypto and what motivated you to start Curvens?
Yeah, well, a lot of questions there. Well, first, thanks for inviting me on. As you said, I've been building Curvance for a while now. As I kind of evolved from my previous career in traditional finance and looking at crypto is pretty organic. I guess I started doing some very basic Bitcoin mining in 2012 on like a crappy laptop in my dorm room. Um, didn't make very much money, but uh, it was interesting. Just I was in engineering before I went into finance, and as you could mine some Bitcoin, and then you couldn't really do a whole lot else, right? So I kind of forgot about that, and then as I basically forgot about it, I went through my career path through engineering, and then eventually into finance. I worked on at a hedge fund, a volatility hedge fund. Building a systematic trading algorithm, basically for investment. Then did my master's, then went to an asset manager, worked on the trading floor there. So very conventional, like traditional finance background on the buy side. I did a lot of like big data work. I guess like the role
Yeah.
you would kind of conceptualize that as is like a quant, or for someone maybe less familiar with like the terminology, it's essentially like a glorified data scientist. Statistics, machine learning, like now everyone calls it AI, programming, that whole math, all that type of stuff.
Oh,
And actually, during the COVID crash, people started talking about crypto again because it was like, oh my God, crypto's going to zero. And I was like, oh, what is like this thing? And it kind of ignited this like, oh, I'm interested in what's been going on in the last, or 8 years at that point. And then I basically uh, started to periodically dive into things as stock market and crypto started to bounce back, and innovation started to really heat up with things like DeFi summer, and I just saw people building all these really cool things in the industry, and it felt a lot more transformative than me making like an incrementally better model for minimizing trading costs, or helping people execute orders, more quickly or more efficiently. Uh, so that's what really brought me into crypto. And fundamentally, I just wanted to build a product that like I would actually use myself. Right now, DeFi is very fragmented. If you want to go and trade tokens, you could go to a DEX. If you want to go and borrow against some wrap Bitcoin, you could go to a money
yeah.
market. If you want to maybe mint some stable coin to hold assets on chain, you go to a CDP platform. You want to go from one chain to another, you bridge. Like everything is kind of this own
Yeah.
isolated piece of technology. And
Yeah.
I guess our perspective is that it needs to be more integrated, right? Like you log into something like Robinhood, which is an example I use a lot. You don't need to go to a different site to trade stocks versus to trade bonds versus to trade
Yeah.
foreign exchange like currencies or futures or whatever, options and so on. I don't see why crypto and DeFi should be any different, right? So we've built this
Makes sense.
this kind of unified stack, which is something a lot of people talk about. People talk about the idea of like super apps, terminals, front ends, better UX. Like that's obviously a popular
Yeah.
idea, but we've taken a very different approach about building like
Yeah.
actually on-chain composable technology.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a very interesting like background. I think like a lot of people that came to crypto came or either through trading, through finance, like you said, or like got into Bitcoin early because of poker and stuff, or like the pure technologies. So you came like from the intersection of it. And yeah, like I think like you said, like DeFi Summer was like the a click in my mind when I first like start to dive into crypto. And like a lot of people that came to the markets back then like got this feeling like, dude, this is like really amazing, and it's gonna be like make real impact on on the markets and on our day-to-day lives maybe in the future. So like what you said about about like being like integrate stuff, like today if you need to do like anything in crypto, like you need like a lot of clicks. Like Robinhood is a good example. Like you press two buttons and you buy what you want, you sell what you want, and like people want this. So yeah, it makes sense like to think in like integrate everything. And like you said about UX and all this new stuff, like now we have like a new narrative coming that's like chain abstraction. And the way you talk your idea about like Curvance, it like reminds what chain abstraction is trying to build, but like with like a lot of like different levels of abstraction. You need to build like separate stacks and to get what you want in chain abstraction. And Curvance, you kind of building like the whole stuff, right?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, as you just said, a lot of people are looking at things like chain abstraction and just trying to really push blockchain behind the scenes. Like the example sometimes give is that when people first started using the internet, they would have to directly connect to the internet with something called root access, right? But nowadays, that's all abstracted, where you could just pay 49.99 and get some monthly subscription to Verizon or something, or AT&T, whatever, and it handles all of that for you, right? You send your connections there, you get an IP address, and that's all. You don't need to worry about HTTPS and IPv4 versus v6 and all this stuff that no one really
Mm.
cares about, right? I kind of view crypto as going that same path, and a lot of people do. But I think the big disconnect that I see today is that I view people, that are very intelligent, a lot more intelligent than I am, trying to solve these things with these like very new technical innovations, and trying to like move people to different platforms and different tools and such. Like the example I would give is like different wallets, right? There's so many of these like different wallet abstraction tools, like
Yeah.
universal balance style wallets, where the idea is like, okay, now you could use your gas from base to go pay for a transaction on Arbitrum or something, or new EIPs or shared sequencing, or layer type, aggregation layer type things. All these solutions, which some of them are probably going to be quite successful, but I think it's just a very difficult task to get people off of something like MetaMask, right, where you have like 30, 40, 50 million monthly users. Are you going to be able to convince 40 million people to move off of the most popular wallet to your wallet, right? Without like
Yeah.
some downstream incentive, or really just building a better product in every capacity, where, over a 10-year period, maybe you win. It's just a lot easier for us to kind of roll up our sleeves and build those implementations ourselves on chain, so that it looks the exact same, right? You could use your MetaMask wallet, you could use whatever operating system you want. You don't need to know anything about EIPs, or like wallet abstraction, account abstraction type stuff. Like it just works, right? And I think that's what
Yeah.
people are looking for. They're looking to go to a site and it just works. They could do everything they want in DeFi. They don't have to care about like connecting to different chains and being like, what's the DEX on this chain versus the money market on this chain versus whatever. And Rome wasn't built in a day, right? We're not going to be able to
Yeah.
solve everything day one, but I think we've built a pretty good foundation, and we're a hungry team that wants to keep shipping new features, and pushing the envelope, such that maybe 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, maybe the Curvance of tomorrow, or DeFi 4.0, whatever the heck we're on at the time, maybe it looks a little bit better for people, that you have people using blockchain stuff, but they don't have to worry about the intricacies of blockchain anymore.
All right. Yeah, I believe we're gonna get there one day. And like you said, against the product, like MetaMask is a great example of it. Was the first wallet, is the most widely adopted wallet, but I don't remember using a worse wallet than MetaMask, and they still dominates. So it would take a lot of time for like this network effects to like drain down, something like that. And so yeah, I think that the app stack is something like that it's missing right now. And you can like ride all these like innovations in the wallet sides, and the newbies, they can just come like use some abstract away stuff and connect to your protocol and do their thing. So about like this, the protocol evolving, like the first time I heard about Curvance, I thought was just like a money market with like a built-in omnichain futures, that it was already like a huge innovation for the time. But you are actually building way more stuff, way more interesting stuff. So can you give like a brief overview for our listeners on what is Curvance and what are the main features in the protocol right now?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple in concept. Essentially, you have at its core these, vaults or shared accounts, right? Where basically, if you have 10,000 users that want to be in some certain asset, or position, or strategy, or whatever, it pools everyone's assets together, right? So that might be just wrap Bitcoin, or that might be, providing liquidity on Aerodrome in some USDC Arrow LP pair that claims the rewards and reinvests them every 10 seconds, right? So like that full spectrum of like really basic, like I just have tokens, versus like a whole managed like operation. And then we have a lot of peripheral technology around those vaults, those accounts, that supports those, right? So things like, as you said, like being able to collateralize, borrow against assets like a conventional money market, cross-chain composability, the ability to manage positions like zapping in and out of things, so integrations with dex aggregators and such. So like one of the examples that I've gave recently that we're going to be integrating in our test net in around 2 weeks is now inside Curvance. One of the things people are going to be able to do is you can update an Oracle price, then deposit assets into some pool, collateralize those assets, borrow against those assets, then swap those borrowed assets into like the asset that you're depositing, then deposit those new assets, then collateralize those new assets, and then it's going to make sure that you're in the right risk tolerance and leave your new strategy like how you want it, right? So you could build leverage positions, you could build like different pair trades, long, short, this, that. And we've wrapped this up in two major um, innovations, or new pieces of technology that are more in the public consciousness. So one of these is this permissionless executable code. What I would relate that to is Uniswap V4 hooks, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like
So,
we don't view them as a competitor or anything. Like they're very complementary products, but
can,
I think it's a
can
good
you
illustration. Can I speak on that?
Can you give yeah, can you give a brief overview for the audience
Yeah.
that's not familiar with like the hooks
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. So, I'll talk about it from like Uniswap's perspective and then ours. So essentially, Uniswap v4 is like the idea is a platform now. Like you can build your own executable code that runs alongside, the typical Uniswap Dex logic, right? So that's like different pricing curves. So you could do things like stable swap versus conventional Uniswap. You could do things like MEV capture. You could do things like KYC or investing into other external products. Like it lets you build more dynamic technology that has these DEX components, sandwiched around it, I guess, like two pieces of bread around this, like, kind of, whatever people want, whatever
Mm.
code they want to write. And that's pretty much how it works with Curvance as well. It's a little different. We call it our plugin system, but in practice, it's actually very easy. If you've ever done something on chain, maybe you want to send your friend like $100 or something. You would, either just hit like the send button, or maybe there's some contract or something you could deposit through, and you do like an ERC20 approval. You say, I'm going to approve this
Mm.
smart contract to take $100 so I could go give it to my friend, right? And then
Yeah.
approve it, and it takes your $100, and you could use that contract now. It's the exact same way for us, right? So you can, but instead of approving a token to go have it transfer, you're approving an action, right? So maybe you're approving a
Mm.
plugin to borrow against your stuff, right? So maybe you have some money deposited into Curvance, so you're saying, look, I'm not going to let you touch my stuff, but you can borrow against my assets and decide what you want to do with them. Or maybe it's for claiming rewards or collateralizing things and blah, blah. I'm not going to, bore you with all the
Right.
technicals, but essentially what that allows you to do is to build really complex integrations with Curvance. Like, for example, one of the things that we built internally is we can implement bridges through that. So now you can borrow and then bridge in the same transaction. And that's how you get the cross chain money market, right? Now you've cross chain borrowing, you could build cross chain lending, cross chain deposits. But there's also new things that like we haven't built yet that can be built either by contributors to Curvance or external people, right? Because it's permissionless. So maybe people want to build limit orders or take profit strategies, dollar cost averaging, making sure you don't get liquidated, add some margin, like these different
Yeah.
types of things. Make a Telegram trading bot for it, right? Where now you could use Telegram instead of your browser wallet or
Cool.
something. So it's pretty flexible. And then the last thing we're integrating is what a lot of people have been talking about now around Mev and a lot of these like these thought leadership, big brain people that are digging into all this like math and science and ways to improve the stack. Is application specific sequencing. So essentially, we're actually going to look like my earlier example was Robinhood. It'll actually look pretty similar to Robinhood in that we could sell order flow like they can. So
Oh,
what the way Robinhood monetizes is when someone wants to buy and sell stuff, they can allow some external partner
yeah.
to essentially bid on and buy that order flow, right? Someone like Citadel or some other high frequency trading shop, and that's how they monetize in part, right? Obviously, they have many
Right.
revenue streams, but that's one of them. And it'll be very similar here. So if just hypothetically, someone need to get liquidated through like one of those money market operations, rather than it having just kind of going out there to everyone to immediately liquidate and then someone just does a really high cost transaction to push it through. That actually can go back to the application, right? So now that can
Yeah.
fund like future development of the product. It could go back to users, right? Like maybe it's going to lenders,
So
or maybe it's go for it.
let me see if I got it.
I just
Like
said a
just
lot
let
there,
me
so
yeah, just let me explain for people that are not like used to how this like order flow monetization works.
sure.
So if you're like trading on Robinhood, they don't charge you a fee, but they sell your order flow to market makers, and like these guys pay them a fee. So that's basically how it works. So in Curvens, like you said, we can I can let me see if you have somebody gonna be liquidated, a way you're gonna be liquidated, so you can like streamline this information to a solver, something like that,
Yeah,
and this
yeah. It's
solver can
it's an
perform the
off-chain
action
auction.
and
So
pay like a
solver.
fee
Yeah.
to you guys. It's gonna be something like that.
Yep. Yeah, so it's I'm not gonna bore you with like the back end technicals unless you're interested, but essentially it's
Right.
exactly what you said, right? So like someone says, there's $500 to be made and it's $500 for free, right? Like that's sick.
Yeah.
So, someone
Uh,
might be willing to do it for only $100 or someone might be willing to do it for only $50 and they could kind of bid themselves down. Historically, we've done a lot of like, analysis on chain. Go for it.
no, I'm interested actually, but like I'm probably not gonna understand it all. So we may chat after the recording.
Sure,
But
sure.
what I was going to ask was like, so it's like a solver auction that's
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
run at the
So
back
it
end,
gets batched
and
together. So then
oh,
they
that's
can do
cool.
the liquidation, but they have to
Mm,
pay whatever they bid. Otherwise, it reverts the whole thing, right? So if you're gonna make $500 and you said, hey Chris, we're gonna give back, $300 of that, like you need to give that $300 back at the end. Otherwise, it'll take your $500 away basically. So ends up being another way to monetize. Like right now, we've done a lot of analysis and both Aave and Compound have left around $90 million in incentives on the table over the last 4 years, and that's no fault of their own, right? This
yeah.
technology didn't exist. Like I imagine, I'm very bullish on the Aave team in particular. I'm sure they're going to implement stuff like this as well. Um, so I think that we've historically seen a lot of that value that goes to like in ETH's case like staked ETH users, right? So like that's just extra money for them basically. But now we're seeing ways for that to actually flow back to the application. In around 2017 there was this discussion between the fat app thesis and the fat protocol
Yeah.
thesis, where whether the chain itself would become the really valuable thing, and accrue all this mev, and sell block space as this kind of like commodity provider and make a ton of money, which largely was the case, right? Like people were paying $100 to swap on ETH, mainnet, to trade
Yeah.
NFTs, and swap on Uniswap and whatever. And then look at like platforms like Solana, where like they're making a ton of money and all these priority fees for people trading things like meme coins and stuff like that. But we're starting to see applications become extremely profitable, and potentially
Yeah.
flip the layers, the blockchains they're sitting on top of, like MakerDAO, now
Yeah.
Sky, and Aave, for
Pump.fun
example.
actually. Pump.fun
Pump Fun
actually
as
like
well.
turned it
Yeah.
number one in fees for like a short period of time.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 100%. So, we're big believers that like that's where things are going. I mean, the metric I heard earlier this year is that a new layer 2 is launching every 17 days on Ethereum,
What?
right? I'm sure that's even faster now. That was early this year,
Yeah.
right? So maybe it's every 13 days or
Dude,
12 days now or something. I
it's
don't have
crazy.
updated metrics there. But,
But
if
it's
you
still
think about
crazy.
that, there's not that much money, there's not enough new money coming into the industry to support like the number of chains, 5xing every year or something.
Yeah.
So something's got to give, right? Either the TVL on all these chains needs to keep going lower, or the money they make,
Yeah.
on that liquidity, on those fees, needs to go down, proportionally. And I think it's
It's
going to be the latter. And I think the apps stand to win, through that. And the user wins too, right? Like whenever
yeah.
there's a lot of competition, that's going to push down costs and stuff, and generally that comes back to the user, hopefully, right? But
Yeah.
that's how we kind of think about this.
Yeah, I agree with you on the chain sides. Like, there's like more chains than users in crypto maybe right now. And regarding like the Fed app thesis, we're starting to flip like this. I think like he who owns the distribution, like probably gonna get more the most money out of the system. And we're seeing this like with Unichain right now. So they're like tired of like leaking MEV to each mainnet and like gonna start their new chain to monetize MEV and all this stuff. And like I think this is like just the beginning of like the Fed FTZ starting to play out. And but let's go back a little bit. So you were talking about like the amount of customizable strategies on Curvance that like a pair trading, and I can go like leverage looping like we can do in the in common money market, and different strategies with yield with LPs. And like most of these markets or all of them are they are isolated, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so the way it
And
works, for us, is that they're isolated in what I call pods, right? So they're not isolated in the sense of every asset has its own market, but we can, some assets are relatively correlated, so you could kind of pull them together and have like a cross margin experience. The reason why some of these, incumbent under the hood, things like stablecoin issuers and money markets look virtually the same. So I kind of batch them together in
yeah,
this. A lot of them have moved to these like fully isolated models, and the reason they've done that is that if a token becomes depegged, or somehow gets exploited or something, it could create a lot of bad debt. And these systems don't really have, the current models don't really have the technology to address bad debt. So it ends up just being this race for the exit, where there's $20 million missing and there's $40 million in the pool. Well, you don't want to be the last
yeah.
$20 million in there, or whatever money it is, $100, $1,000. You don't want to be in that back
The,
half 50%, because you lose everything, right? So one of the things that we built is we built a way to socialize bad debt, where basically it gets equally spread across all lenders. So it looks a lot more like conventional web too. Like if you're part of like
yeah,
certain, you know, uh, underwriting, you're in tranches and things like that. Like you have, like there's, mezzanine tranche and all these different. I'm not going to go into like the
yeah,
TradFi breakdown, but there's different pools, but everyone gets the same effect when you're in the same pool, right? So it's kind of replicating what you see in traditional finance. Obviously we don't want to support like random assets that are, unvetted, not secure, no liquidity, and we don't want people to, suddenly lend into these things and lose money. But we did think that like cross margin experience is pretty important, right? Like if you're willing to lend against Lido ETH, you're probably willing to lend against something like Rocket Pool ETH too, right?
Yeah.
So it's relatively safe. So now you don't need twice as much liquidity, right? You could park them both in the same pool, and that means that now you get larger capital efficiency, more efficient usage of dollars in. That's better returns for lenders, and even if somehow a shortfall did occur, you know hopefully they've made enough up until that happens to offset any loss there.
All right, got it. Yeah, it makes sense. I think the only like advantage of isolated markets, you can add both, is like to list like long tail assets. But like you said, some kind of like long tail assets like too risky for like the system, right? And regarding
Yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah, you can go. Do you
Oh,
have anything
I
to?
didn't know if you were done your thought. I was just gonna say
Uh,
that we also can support isolated margin, right? So it's like again, like we're trying to build a strong foundation that's really flexible, right? Because we don't know where the product market fit is exactly gonna come. Like you were talking, right there. There's so many different types of assets. Some of them are very risky and we definitely don't want to support, and some of them are clearly like everyone loves to deposit into like liquid restaking stuff, right? Like
yeah,
obviously people are gonna use that, but I kind of view it as like we throw a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks, right? So, I imagine we might support, 50, 100, whatever, assets, and maybe only 10 of them are really highly used, and the other 40, over a certain different type of form, a different chain, different asset type. And then we double down on the winners, right? So it's about like building a strong foundation in which like the DAO can continue building on top of ad infinitum.
yeah, that's makes sense. It's like how it works in all of the money markets, right? Like the uh, the high end of the assets are the ones that make like 80 to 90% of that, like the volume of that borrowing and lending. So yeah, and on the strategies again, do we have like, if I'm an experienced DeFi user, I can go there and like build my strategies. Can I in any way like monetize these strategies like vaults? Like I'm building like I have like a yield strategy like that I'm farming like some aerodrome yield and I collateralize and leverage up to borrow in another place that have like incentives, and right now I'm making like 50% APR. Can I monetize on this strategy like some plug and play for like some I wanna share with my followers, and like the guys go there, all right,
Right.
wanna try this, and they can I monetize this in any way and share with people?
Yeah, yeah. So the way I think about that is the end is a little bit of a roundabout answer, but the answer is yes. And then I'll take you on this short journey with me.
All right.
So the way I think about the industry is it's very tiny right now, right? Like
Yeah.
the pie is very small, and I think a lot of teams view it as like we're gonna try to beat everyone and we're gonna get the whole pie. Like whether that be you're a chain and you want your chain to be, kill all the other chains, or your app to kill all the other apps or whatever. We've kind of taken a different approach in that we're trying to like grow the pie. And the adage that I use is 1 + 1 = 3, right? The sum is greater than its parts, if you
Yeah.
will. So as part of that, we want other people to also win with Curvance's success. So to take that to the next level, that's not only the chains, that's not only the applications we work with, that's also the users, right? So one of the things that we're working on is we've already built like a referral system, invite system, a lot of this back end technology, and it's pretty easy to adopt it, to allow people to monetize. So one of the things that we're looking at doing. Have you ever used like something like Bitly or Tiny URL or some of these like link generation
Yeah.
tools?
Yeah.
So I kind of I view that as like the perfect way to add some social aspect to DeFi, because right now like there isn't really that many good resources, right? Like you can make a YouTube
Yeah.
video and be like, here's how you farm, something something on Curve or Sushi Swap or Uniswap, Aerodrome, whatever. But a lot of that information is pretty quickly out of it's like not accurate anymore.
Yeah.
Videos don't get very many views on YouTube versus something like Twitter, X, whatever. So it's like we want new ways to do that. So one of the things that we're going to do is people are going to be able to build some strategy and then basically copy it and generate a link that now essentially when you send it to someone is queuing up that 1 2 3 step process, whatever it is. And then it embeds a referral code under the hood if we have some active campaign going where now you've referred that user, and now when they receive any incentives through like our Bytes campaign and stuff like that, you get a piece of that, it essentially indefinitely, and unless they really try to screw you on the background there, I guess. And then as part of that, you also can tie this into the plugin system. Like one of the easiest plugins to be or to make would be to have someone be able to approve the ability to collateralize. But then when you're linking them that link, you've kind of given them that information, set up the thing, and it takes off, maybe 0.1%, right? And it sends it to you, right? So if you get 100,000 users in, or some huge number, you could stand to build like a whole business around it, and creating these cool ideas, looking for opportunities on different chains, different applications and stuff like that. And that makes the life of Curvance easier if you have a ton of people really championing it versus a few people that are kind of shouting into the hurricane that is crypto Twitter.
in inside our own echo bubble, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
that's a very like interesting like distribution strategy. And you mentioned like the Bytes campaign. So you guys are on testnet. You launched testnet in August, right?
It was
And
so
now,
the just to clarify, we did the
right.
public one in August. We've been in private testnet since around April. So it's actually,
Oh, okay.
very long process here. We've built out the product. And
Uh,
people have been very helpful in helping to
yeah.
kind of cultivate and sculpt what the actual app looks like. But please continue. I just wanted to throw that in.
All right, no, that's okay. And so, yeah, you're building like a lot of stuff, so you need like a very extensive testing period, so don't get anything like wrong. We get like too many hacks already, so yeah, it's better like to have patience and like do like the slow and steady work instead of rush to and risk to get something like some mistake and some like some fatal mistake. So regarding the bytes campaign that you mentioned, is this like an incentivized testnet campaign? Can you talk a little bit more about it? And
Yes, I
when
can't
if
talk
it's
about exact specific like outcomes and stuff, but the idea
that's good.
is, we're building essentially like a permissionless DAO, right? And as part of that, we want people to have a piece of that, and to you know get some piece of the DAO for the value that they put in, and that comes up in a lot of different ways. That comes up in obviously using the product when it's live. That comes in and providing feedback and helping to cultivate what the application looks like. But that also goes for like social aspects, right? Or creating content, being part of that like kind of audience community and such. And we really need all of these things together to create like a successful system. I think DAOs in general have a pretty bad opinion of them right now. Like not a lot of
Yeah.
people are that bullish on DAOs because I think they're kind of spun up very quickly. There's a lot
Mm,
of
mm,
bureaucracy and stuff like that.
lack of
Go on.
efficiency. Yeah, mainly
Yeah.
lack of efficiency. I think it's like governments, like a lot
Yeah.
of bureaucracy and lack of efficiency. So yeah, like you said, if you decentralize too early, you're probably like gonna lose in efficiency and might probably will lose to a competition that like takes the time to decentralize it.
Right,
But,
right. But to answer your question,
yeah.
yes, we're providing, bytes to testnet participants. That'll continue through like our pre-deposit campaign period and through the beta launch. And the goal is to have like a very structured rollout of like the Curvance DAO, and have, the people that built up the product own the DAO essentially.
Oh, cool, interesting. So it did start in the private test net, and gonna do you know for how long does it gonna run? Can you can you share
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
how long does it
So
gonna run?
Yeah, so the idea here is, and there'll probably be more sequential, periods of. I view like you want to. So we have like gauge emissions and cross chain incentives and stuff like that, where people can
Mm,
direct those emissions. And I think that's very tangible and something that's important. But I think there's also some intangible values that maybe aren't captured by people just saying like I want 1,000 tokens to go to this pair or
yeah.
whatever, that these longer campaigns kind of help with. So I think that'll kind of extend beyond that first season, if you will. But
Mm,
to answer your question, I view it as basically a three-step process, right? You have testnet, or I guess four: private testnet, public testnet,
mm,
the pre-deposit, which will be very short. And then the beta launch, which will be a bit longer. One team that I have a lot of respect for in the industry is Hyperliquid. They very much like got a great product out there and then just kept like shipping new features, new expansions. Like they've built a very well polished product. And
mm,
in that same vein, I view our beta launch as being very similar to that, right? Where at that point we theoretically have launched a really good product, but there's so many things to build, right? Like these, link generation things and wallet abstraction, more chain support, more asset support, new features, new plugins. Like there's so many things to
yeah.
do, and we want to just like keep like clockwork shipping things twice a month, four times a month, whatever frequency we can. Right? Obviously, we don't want to rush things, but I would anticipate that to extend a few quarters out.
Two quarters.
But I think when that actually, one of the things that we're exploring internally is actually letting the users decide that, right, based on like their bytes allocation. Like maybe they could decide when that season one ends, right? Is it 6 months of
That'd be
beta, 9 months of beta? Like I don't know, like let them
an
decide,
interesting
right? Not me.
experiment. That would be
Yeah,
an
so we'll see.
interesting
Maybe it's a terrible
experiment.
idea.
Yeah, like someone need to try. So yeah, it's like might be a good idea. We don't know. But like, do you have like a date for to mainnet and estimative to mainnet? Like you said, gonna be a three-step phase. So during
Yeah.
beta mainnet, you guys gonna still have like the bytes campaign, like phase two or phase
Yeah.
three. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so the
And
Bytes
you
campaign will be extended through beta, and the beta launch will be on at least 7 chains with, a number of assets on that. So it'll be the full product, right? It'll be the full product minus like the Curvance DAO component. And in terms of timeline, really the biggest like fickle thing is this final round of audits, because as you said, we need to make sure everything is perfect. We've been auditing for around 14 months now as we've
a lot
built
of
out the
time.
product. So it's been pretty unconventional to kind of like continually be engaging with these auditors for not only like finding bugs but also like best practices and making sure that the code itself is structured in a professional and safe manner. And then we're going to do this one final big push, but it's probably not going to be the end of this year. It'll probably be like I would say early is like maybe a little aggressive, but before the end of the first half of the year,
First,
100%.
uh, all right,
So,
cool. I'm looking
is that end of
forward.
Q1? Is that beginning of
Yeah,
Q2? I don't know. It's ready
yeah.
when
It's
it's ready, right? Is what I always say. I'd rather take an extra 30 days or something to make sure it's like flawless and people aren't going to like lose their money or something.
Yeah, it's like it's way better to wait a little bit. And like I'm seeing this happening with like Tapioca DAO recently, and like they're like doing the audits, and people keeps complaining, Discord, come on, launch the project,
Yeah.
scam, and
I
people
think it's tougher for them
keep
too because their
yelling.
token's out. So now people
Yeah,
are like, when am I going to use this thing?
yeah, people keeps like yelling, like you just need to take the time and like don't rush stuff to like don't like do bad things. Like when Indra Cronje used to like try with like live code and people used to like aping the deposit and
Yeah, and
well,
then
I
people
don't
lose
remember if it
money.
was solidly some project like were hacked. I don't remember how much, but like there was a bunch of money, so it's like it's better for this not to happen again.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think, first off, on the tapioca topic, I think they're doing it the right way. I have a lot of respect for, them kind of
I agree.
also taking that, slow and steady wins the race approach. Because that's how I think you build things that last. But
Agree.
to touch on the latter piece of what you said there, I think that's why a lot of people have been resonating with things like meme coins and stuff, because like people, when they're building like applications or chains and things like that, they're very much like launching these like kind of half-baked products, things that are relatively,
Yeah,
unfinished, unpolished. They're maybe not like that transformative. And then some of them, a lot of them get hacked, right? So it's like, do you want to even use these things that aren't that much better than what's out there? Like that's why one
doesn't
of the
make
things that
sense.
always makes me laugh is the Aave guys with their adage of just use Aave, which I think is great, right? They're a stellar team, and I think they're right. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
largely, 99.9% of things out there just aren't worth the extra risk, right? That maybe they get
yeah,
exploited. Maybe there's, the
like,
product's not that much better. Maybe it's even worse. So you're better using like a tried and true,
yeah,
Lindy protocol, like some of these, called DeFi 1.0
for
juggernauts,
sure.
right? The people that were out in the last cycle and such. But that's why it's so important
Yeah,
for us to take our time and we don't view any of these guys as competitors. We view it very, collaboratively, and hopefully we could end up, helping them build cool stuff too, and them help us build cool things. So that's why we got to take our
yeah,
time. Otherwise, we don't want to, be the 80th, protocol of the week getting, bopped
yeah.
by some North Korean or whatever hacker.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. I agree. I think it's the best approach. And like you said, it's not worth the extra risk. Like right before we started here, like Radiant just got exploited.
Did they
So
really?
that, yeah,
The
that's
Radiant
for a second
Capital,
time.
money market. Oh my god.
Yeah, Radiant just got, they literally like 5 minutes before we hop in here, just got exploited. So
Unbelievable.
that's like I that's like you just explained why it, like
Yeah.
it just
Yes, I mean,
happened
it's
like
like
what you were
that's
saying.
like a pure money market with some cross chain, right? So like in that case, you
Yeah,
probably would have been better off using Aave there. There you go. There's
yeah,
your example.
yeah,
So I
and
think that it's tough because like it's hard to get that money back, and for users like the upside isn't like that attractive, right? Like maybe you're getting slightly higher
yeah.
returns, or maybe there's one or two new features, but
Some
the
long
risk
tail
is big.
asset that, yeah, they, sorry for to interrupt, like the long
Oh,
tail
go ahead.
assets, this is the only way, the only thing like that it's worth it if they there's something like that you cannot use on Aave. So I think that's
Right,
the only
right,
thing like that makes sense. And like what we were talking in the beginning of the conversation, like you need to build like a 10 times better product for people like to take the extra risk. So
right,
people not
right.
gonna
That was one
just
of the
leave
things we
Aave.
had to think about, actually. Like
Yeah,
last year, like mid last year, we actually, even had a discussion internally, and the discussion was like, well, the product's in a state now where it has new features, new opportunities and stuff. Like it theoretically is new and improved and
yeah,
worthwhile to exist. But is it a big enough innovation? Is it that much of a 0 to 1 moment that it really is going to kind of blow the door off the hinges and really get people excited and inspired and actually using the thing, right? Because if it's, as you said, if it's incremental, then it's not enough, of an incentive to use it. If we've built all this new technology that's more scalable, more asset types and such, and can interlock with all of our peers, all these applications and stuff that we integrate with, that's going to build a much better kind of explosive rollout of the technology, right? Because like
yeah,
I view crypto is a very much an attention game, right? And you only get so much time to really
yeah,
win people over, I find, right? So it's like it's much better for us to take our time and really release something compelling rather than launching like a V1 or something that's pretty good and then trying to get out of
yeah.
V2 as quick as we can, right? We're almost kind of launching that V2 as our initial launch, and then our actual V2 will be that much better, I guess.
Yeah, like in crypto, you only have like you want these two things that you only get once, like the launch of the protocol and the launch of the token. If you like don't get this wrong, don't get this right, it's like gonna be like a very like an uphill battle to like gain attention back like from users, especially now that like the attention span of the average crypto participant is getting smaller and smaller. Like the people, I was joking with a friend like a couple days ago that our brains like are like being like TikTok configured like to be like fast iterations, and like with these
Yep.
meme coin cycles, like we're getting like this faster and faster. So it's hard right now. It's very hard like to win mind share against people, and that now I want to like take a hook for like that your goal launch strategy. So I don't know if what you can share, but you
Sure.
said it's like I'm building like something that's like it's supposed to be way better than we already have, like with like some 0 to 1 innovations, something that we
Right.
are missing in crypto right now. And like in your testnet you have like movement and barrel chains testnet right now, you're live,
Yeah.
and like monad's names up there for like when they release their testnet. So you
Yep.
guys are like mostly of the like new like pumped ecosystems, let's say like that.
Yeah.
So how do you plan like to incentivize people to start using it? Because even like
Yeah.
as a way better product, people needs like awareness and they need some incentive to take the extra risk. And
Yep.
besides like a one long tail asset that you don't find in anywhere
Yep.
else.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
like how are you guys approaching like this and like this go to market that's getting harder and harder over time in crypto?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could speak for like an hour just on that, but I'll try to collect my thoughts there quickly. I think it's really um first I'll touch on like the chain piece that you mentioned, and then I'll touch on the
Right.
incentive piece that you mentioned. So I view chain support as really two separate buckets, right? You have like incumbent chains that already have users, product market fit, liquidity, revenue potential and such. That's the Ethereums, the Arbitrums, the bases, and such of the world. I think those, no matter what you have to support, we've been very fortunate that those teams have been very supportive of us. Like we love the Off Chain Labs team. Jesse from Base is a great guy. The Optimism Foundation's great. And Mantle team's great. Like all these like more like already live products, already live chains, already live communities, and opportunities there. But then we have a few forward-looking bets. As you mentioned, movement, Barachain, and Monad are the three forward-looking bets that we're taking, and for all different reasons. Like I think there's a lot of people that are kind of narrative chasers in terms of like supporting new chains. Like we're going to
Yeah.
launch a Dex on some new chain, and hopefully it takes off. Like that's the goal. But
Another
I think for
Uniswap
us,
fork.
like yeah, yeah. So I think for us, those each of those, um, first is obviously we're very bullish on the individual teams, right? Like Smokey and Jack at Barachain are, two like awesome people, smart people, fun to be around. Like they'd be my friends even if I wasn't in like crypto or working with them on the chain side. Same thing with Monad, right? The Monad team, very talented builders from like a technology standpoint, really get the kind of attention economy stuff and building like a community. Same thing. Barachain's also great on that. The movement guys are a bit younger and like super hungry. They're like some of the fastest to respond, fastest to get things done people I know, and I love that attitude. And all three of these teams are excited about what we're building for different reasons, right? So from movement side, I think it's an opportunity for us to, really help bootstrap DeFi on their chain and,
Yeah.
showcase a lot of the Move VM based native projects that are, either native to them or maybe they're on one other chain like Aptos or something, and really lifting up like their, kind of grassroots builders, I guess I would describe it. And
Mm.
it also unlocks Move VM based chains for us in the future, like if we wanted to launch there, which we otherwise wouldn't get. Barachain's done a really cool job building on the consensus model with proof of liquidity, and the ability to kind of enshrine DeFi at the chain level. What are we, right? We essentially have these like DeFi opportunities at our core, and then we build technology around it. That's basically what they've done too, just in
Yeah.
different ways. So I think working with the proof of liquidity technology is uniquely interesting to us and is exciting. And then on the side of Monad, it's very much focused on this high throughput, new innovative order books, whatever. And there's a lot of cool teams that we could work with, products we could build on top of, and such that we won't be able to support elsewhere. And then, I
Mhm.
recognize we're almost at the top of the hour here, so I'll jump into the incentives piece. I think that that's
Well,
mainly
if
about
you
rewarding people.
we can pass a little bit
Okay.
over 1 hour.
Cool.
That's cool. That's cool.
So on the side of incentives, I think you're right in that if you support a lot of different assets, a lot of different chains and such, you one, are kind of strapped, right? In terms of like now you have to provide a lot of opportunity for people across a wide ecosystem, but also like, is it even enough to get people in the door? And I think there's a few pieces to that. The first is like joint campaigns with a lot of our partners. One of the things that I think makes Curvance uniquely poised to actually onboard users is that we are built on top of, in large part, some of these things are internalized, but in large part, other applications, assets, and protocols, right? So it's like you don't need to choose between, say, on base, you don't need to choose between Aerodrome and us. You could still farm Aerodrome. You're just farming Aerodrome on Curvance, right? And now you get access to all this new technology. That's kind of a no brainer, right?
Yeah.
And you could extend that to whatever chain, right? Like order book protocols on Monad or dexes and other proof of liquidity integrated stuff on Berachain and such. So you're getting a larger opportunity set, which really isn't the case with anything else
Mhm.
in DeFi, right?
Yeah.
If you're in the Elixir stablecoin, you're not in the Athena stablecoin. If you're in the EtherFi LRT, you're not in the Renzo
Yeah.
LRT, and so on and so
Yeah.
on. But you could be in the EtherFi LRT and Curvance and so on and so on. So
Yeah.
I think that kind of folding piece is pretty unique to us, and I think that helps a lot. And then we're building, co-campaigns with those teams. We'll direct extra incentives and opportunities to your community if you do the same to ours. And I think the other piece to
Mm.
that is building non DeFi technology into the application too. So things like social aspects, referrals. As I spoke to you about, like the
Mm.
ability to monetize, that also extends into the beta launch where that'll be more on like the Bytes campaign side where, if you have, a ton of liquidity, through your own portfolio or through your friends, your network, your audience, whatever, you can now, pretty tangibly monetize that by referring these people. And then also, having like social aspects that I think things like friend tech resonated with people a lot. The product unfortunately got completely abandoned, but I think let's add a chat box and like ways to, link your strategies and, kind of gamify it a little bit, where
Mm.
people are brought more into the fold. And I kind of view it as trying to be like the homepage of DeFi, not in the way that like a DeFi llama is on the
I got
information
it.
side, but more from like a portfolio side.
For
That's what I meant.
application side, right? I think I got it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can explain it, but I can envision what you said. And like it's funny about like the gaming aspect and social stuff, because like crypto sometimes, like if you're like farming stuff, like doing on chain, a lot of on chain activities, it sometimes feels like you're playing a video game with money. So like this gaming aspect like can resonate with like a lot of people, and in like in this front.
100%. Yeah, and I think, I think the big thing that's missing from DeFi is people feeling like they're progressing, right? Because like in a lot of times, like if you ask someone like that's working in like Silicon Valley or something, why they might have like disposable income, they're gonna like a lot of those people like things like passive income or the ability to kind of like consistently feel like they're progressing in one way, right? Either so they could retire
Yeah.
early or so they could potentially buy a bigger house or whatever. And I think that that's largely what DeFi is supposed to help with, right? Like if you're in a non-US country, you might not have access to like all these like opportunities that people have in the US, right? Whether that be things like high yield savings accounts, bonds, like different opportunities to like, essentially
Yeah.
put your money to work. And I think that's what DeFi is, largely that the value proposition of. So it's like if we can make that really easy to engage with and then also make it relatable where people feel like they're progressing and now they could kind of like share in this kind of joint experience, I think that's where it becomes a lot more compelling than, like just this kind of like depressing, points campaign, launch some governance token, hopefully make
and
some
and
money, sell it,
watch the
complain, go to
token
the
go
next.
down like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are also pretty tired of like the venture capitalists, like, 3, 4, or 5 rounds, selling 30% of the token supply, launching the token at these like insane valuations. And then it feels like, no one wants to even buy them because like they're marked up so heavily that you have like these
Yeah.
kind of vaporware tokens that don't do anything that now are trading at like the same, valuation of like an airline or something. You're like, this
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of thing like in crypto right now that doesn't make sense, but yeah, it's like the game we're still playing like until like we can fix it. And
Yeah.
so you mentioned the token that doesn't do anything. I know your
Yeah.
token is pretty like ingrained in the protocol, and like you chose like the VE model, right? So can you elaborate a little bit about the token
Sure.
before we wrap here?
Yeah, yeah. So, I think that one of the biggest benefits we've had is just building through the bear market. We were able to see, what was successful in the bull market, what did not survive or did not perform well in the bear market, and then what was able to, successfully regrow, and reach new, adoption levels and such in the, I don't really think we're in a true bull market yet, even though Bitcoin's doing very well because there's not
Yeah.
much on chain and stuff yet. But what will be this bull market hopefully. And as part of that we've kind of taken notes, right? Like what features and functionality is clearly worked and what hasn't, right? So we've hopefully taken the good, thrown out the bad, and innovated on that, the replace the bad parts, I guess. And what we found is like the voting escrow model is the most aligned with users, and just the best, like most scalable version of it. But there's a lot of problems with it. Things like having to relock, re up your voting power every week.
Yeah.
Things like you're locked into, like for a lot of protocols, application, teams and such. One of the biggest problems is maybe they have this big pile of tokens on, some chain, Arbitrum, whatever. But maybe they want to grow to like base or something next because they're bullish on Coinbase or something. Well, now they're kind of stuck because they have all this like bag of governance tokens that they can't do anything with on base, so they're kind of just trapped on Arbitrum. So that was a piece we needed to solve. And I think the other thing is that we saw like in DeFi summer the innovation from these like conventional liquidity mining operations, sushi swap pools where you have 1,000% APR, pull two type stuff, to, these like incentive markets and newer models like you see with Aerodrome, for example. Um, and I think we could do the same thing, but for chains. So we've built a way for chains to kind of almost PvP each other for liquidity, driving fees to their network and such. So hopefully, again, that level of innovation as well.
Oh,
Can I speak on
that's
that?
interesting. Yeah, I want to ask a question. So instead of like the curve wars, that we get protocols fighting for like the liquidity to direct to bribing people and direct liquidity. You're building a system so like the chains can do that.
Yeah, well, I think it's
Is that
both,
it?
right? It's still the applications, and that the applications want, it is a level more
Mm.
complex in that, now people, you can not only incentivize people to deposit but also to lend. So it's, larger control over actions of users. And now we're also bringing chains into the fold, hopefully. So,
That's
it's more about growing the pie rather than, kind of
mm,
transitioning your target audience. And I think
mhm.
those were, the two biggest things was like expansion of like, being able to incentivize user behavior, and expanding it to chains as well. Cause when we look at things like funding or valuations and things like that, like chains largely have the most resources, right? It's not the
Yeah.
applications that, unless you're like a
Yes.
really breakout app that has a ton of revenue, it's the chains that are, raising this 200, $300 million
Mhm.
round, and their tokens are worth billions of dollars, and they can't do anything with the token, right? So like let's make ways for them to actually use their token.
That's an interesting point of view. Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see like chains fighting for liquidity. We're gonna get there, and like the app's gonna get more value. Like that's why we're here, right? And the lockup, you guys shortened the lockup too, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
it's
like
one
four
year in
years
the current
anymore.
model.
One
Yeah, so
year.
I think the reason for that is kind of what you said, like crypto moves so fast that right now, if someone locks something for a year, then it's like essentially they're like, I'm not getting that, money back
Yeah.
ever. So it's like trying to make it a little bit easier of a decision. But the other thing that we added is people can actually unlock their vote lock positions early, but they take a haircut, right? So if someone really is like, get me out of this thing, I hate Floppy, their mascot. The Curvance DAO sucks. They're so bureaucratic.
Mm.
Whatever, get me out of here. They can, right? Now, of course,
Just
they're going to
any
take a
money.
very, very heavy haircut on that position, but at least they have the option, right? And as
Yeah.
I said earlier in the call, we're trying to build. We don't know what's going to be successful, with what we're building. We hope many things, but we want to give the DAO the tools it needs to
Mm.
be able to make those decisions. And then, if it has 50 levers, if it only needs to use three of them to succeed, then great. If it needs to use all 50, then that's okay too. So it's just
Uh,
about creating those options for users and for the DAO.
that's cool, man. Like it's very cool. Like after talking to Levi at the Monad event and talking to you now, I got like way more bullish on Curvance, and like
Appreciate
it's
that.
like a DeFi guy, and like I'm not seeing like a lot of new stuff. Like just you guys, Tapioca, Peer Protocol is doing something cool, Pando, but it's like another protocol. So just like very few innovations, and like it's good to see like teams like building the trenches, like new stuff and like new stuff that could unlock a lot of like different use cases and speculative and non-speculative stuff. So like I'm looking forward to see it on mainnet. And before we wrap, I want to ask you two more questions,
Sure.
and it's going to be short questions. The first one is, how would you describe Curvance in one sentence?
Hmm. I mean, it's funny you ask because we just kind of we've been refining on our kind of like tagline, right? Like a lot of
Yeah,
companies will have like their kind of one sentence like pitch.
yeah,
And what we've settled on is DeFi from everywhere for everyone, right? It gives you access to this very broad uh, you know, landscape that is DeFi and crypto in general, and we want it to be approachable for everyone, not just the DeFi native person that knows how to do that 10-step process to do some strategy or whatever, but also the person
mm,
that like recognize that there's value and opportunity there, but maybe they're not spending 12 hours a day and on crypto Twitter getting mental illness with everyone else. So we want it to work for everyone, right, and give that
yeah.
kind of large opportunity to everyone. So yeah, DeFi from
Uh,
everywhere for everyone.
Yeah, I liked it. It's a great sentence, actually. And like the other question is, can you give some alpha for our viewers? It doesn't need to be like from
I mean, we
currents or
gave a
from
lot
like
of alpha already. I don't know if I
no,
have too much
yeah,
left, but
it's like
any
a personal
particular
alpha. It
pieces?
doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be like a. I took this from the up only playbook. Like they always like ask
Okay.
for alpha, and like it's good like from you like as a person as
Yeah.
Chris, an alpha for people like that's grinding crypto, that want to be like build startups or they're just starting, like for anyone.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
need
So
to be specific.
yeah, I guess what I would say is, and it's not really specific to Curvance, but the example I would give is that the industry is very much in its infancy still. Um, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I've thought about is there's less developers in crypto right now than there are engineers at Facebook. Like one company is bigger than an entire industry, right? And that's not
It's
so much to
crazy.
say about developers in particular, but it's a very small industry, and I think everyone can agree, some people are jaded and like whether crypto is impactful or not,
Yeah.
but I think it is. I think it'll look very different in the future than what it looks like today, but I think the ability to have these permissionless systems that don't need 1,000 underwriters, 1,000 people working at a company to do stuff, giving people access in different countries to different technology is really powerful, so I think it's here to stay.
Mm,
And I guess what I would, attach to that is like to get involved, right? It's a very tiny industry in its infancy. And as a result of that, there's a lot of opportunity, right? Not just in the pure sense of like, being able to,
yeah.
get into some chain or application, before it really blows up or something, but even like on a personal level, right? Like from building a career, from learning about things. Like I've learned so much just volunteering at DAOs, doing security research work before it really became like a real career path, in the
Mm,
industry. Just talking to so many different like smart founders, builders and such that like if you were in, Silicon Valley or something, like you wouldn't really get the time of day because there's just so much noise that like they're kind of more insulated. So you get access to, the best and brightest in the industry. You could just go to a conference and, go talk to, some
You,
founder that like invented
to
new
anyone.
technology and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um,
anyone's accessible. It's like it's
yeah.
crazy when you come from other industries.
Yeah, so I think that it's not only like a spectator sport where you're kind of isolated on your own and such. I think it's also like super worthwhile to just kind of pull up your sleeves and get involved. So I guess that would be
Yeah.
the alpha I'd give. That could be new
But
ecosystems like Hyperliquid or Monad or Barachain or Movement, or it could be even just like you know talking to interesting people or people that are working on interesting things that are compelling to you and learning a bit more.
yeah, yeah, I think it's a great alpha. Just show up and put the work in, and you're gonna get something probably great, like in your career in crypto.
Exactly.
All right, man. Thanks. Was an awesome conversation. Like I got pretty hyped on Curvance, and yeah, thanks very much. And where can we find more about you or and about Curvance?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we're the Curvance accounts are just Curvance everywhere. So x.com/ Curvance, discord.gg/ Curvance, Telegram, Curvance is the link. So pretty consistent there. You can find me on Twitter at OXMai. And yeah, come get involved, right? Like come get involved with Curvance too. We're eventually going to have, this DAO set up. And like I said, there's ways to get involved not only, on chain, but also in the community, creating content, being present, and such. So we have a live test net, play Tetris on our website. There's tons of ways to get involved. We have a Discord game with these little coins we give out, which are not tied to bytes, but you can buy rolls and stuff with them. So there's tons of ways to get involved. For
Oh,
us too. So yeah, Curvance everywhere, and come get involved.
oh, that's cool. I'm gonna leave all the links in the description and the testnet link too. All right, thanks, man. It was a great conversation. Do you have any final words?
No, thanks for having me. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah.